Well, if you're in the market for a small, affordable hatchback with a lot of practicality, but want something which is different from the usual, then the Renault Kwid Climber is a car that you should definitely go ahead and check out. And why is that? Well, simply because it has a lot of styling updates on the outside, as well as a sporty and more youthful interior than the regular version of the car. So is it worth the extra price, or should you simply avoid it and go ahead with the regular version of the Kwid? We'll find out on the show today. Well, changes on the exterior include roof rails on top, door protecting cladding on the sides, as well as a new set of fog lamps and also a faux protector on the front, which looks like a scuff plate from an SUV. The styling of the wheels also is slightly different, but overall it is essentially the regular version of the Kwid with minor updates, as I said. The bigger changes though have been reserved for the interiors, and now you get an orange accent all across the cabin, which makes it look more youthful as well as sporty. You also get a different steering wheel as well as more premium and a little more comfortable seats than the regular version of the Kwid. You get the same touchscreen as the regular version, and you also get the same gear lever with some orange elements on top. Overall, it is a design which looks more sportier than the original car and also makes it stand out from a sea of Kwids on the road. Well, in terms of space and practicality, the Kwid Climber is definitely ahead of its main rival, which is of course the Maruti Suzuki Alto. You get huge tray over here where you can keep your cell phone and wallet. There's a big cubby space over here where you can keep that 1 liter bottle, and the door bins are also large enough to house those big 1 liter bottles. So it is a great place, and a glorious place in fact, for practicality. In terms of design, it's exactly the same as the regular version of the Kwid, and that's not a bad thing because you get the same digital display as well as the touchscreen infotainment system. Now, in terms of usage, it's not the best system around, but it does get the job done, and for this price point, it is a very good and unique feature to this car and stands out from a sea of other hatchbacks and gives it the edge in terms of overall features list. Now, inside the cabin, the seats also are slightly different from the regular version of the car. These seats definitely feel a little more comfortable than the regular Kwid. You also get more prominent bolsters on the side over here. So if you are someone who will be pushing his car into corners, these seats should hold you better. But ideally, you shouldn't really be pushing the Kwid into corners. You should simply be driving it in a very sensible manner because it is a sensible family car. Well, but that's not all. With the utility places, you also get this huge tray over here where you can keep your cell phone, your wallet, or even a small pouch. And the glove box also is a pretty deep one. So overall, in terms of utility places, it is a great place to be in. There's also a place over there. But there is one area where Renault really should be paying attention to, and that is adding an adjustment feature here for the rear view mirrors, because every time you have to adjust the mirrors, you'll have to roll the window down come rain or hailstorm and take your hand out and do it manually, and that is something which is really very passé and something which will remind you of your father's car, because this is something which we even found on cars way back in the 1990s. Remember the Maruti Zen and the Santro came with those little sticks over here where you can adjust the mirror internally. So that's something that Renault should add, especially considering the fact that they've given you a touchscreen system. It really is very annoying to know that you have to roll the window down to adjust that mirror. Well, in the back over here, as you can see, the Climber is just as good as the Kwid regular car is in terms of space. Headroom is more than adequate for someone who is my height, which for reference is 5'10". And if you are someone who is about 6 or even 6'1 or 6'2", you should be quite comfortable in these seats. Even if you do decide to sit up straight like this, there is decent place above my head. So 6-footers should have any issues at all. They should be comfortable in this car. Knee room is more or less decent, considering it is a small car. At the end of the day, it is more than par for course in this segment. Now, the floorboard over here is almost completely flat, which means that whoever's sitting here has decent place to stretch his feet, and the seats also are almost flattish. So whoever's sitting in the middle should not have too much of issues in terms of space and comfort. Well, so Renault Kwid Climber comes with a 1 liter petrol engine, which makes about 67 bhp. It's the same engine which the Kwid hatchback also offers, so there's no change in that sense. And you also get the choice of a manual or an automatic gearbox. And today we are driving the automatic version of this car, which is of course the top end version of the Kwid Climber. Now, as soon as you start driving off, you will realize that the engine is pretty nice in terms of responsiveness, and the gearbox also does work quite well. Now, it is an automated manual transmission, which means that it's an AMT, not a conventional automatic gearbox. So in that sense, it's not as quick to respond to your throttle inputs as some other cars are. But that said, it is at par with its main rival, the Maruti Suzuki Alto, in terms of responsiveness. Well, so as soon as you start driving off this car, you will realize that the AMT gearbox feels a little sluggish. It is an AMT, and AMT means an automated manual transmission. It's not a conventional automatic gearbox. And in terms of responsiveness, it's not as responsive as some other hatchbacks. Now, if you compare it with the main rival it has, which is the Alto automatic, it does feel more or less at par. It is slightly behind the Alto automatic in terms of overall responsiveness levels. It's not a huge margin, but it is a slight margin in it. Well, in the city, this gearbox is more than adequate for start-stop city traffic, and there aren't any reasons to complain about its performance, because performance is adequate. It's only on the highway that you will realize its limitation, because even when you put the accelerator pedal completely down on the floor, this gearbox, well, it takes a couple of seconds to respond. And if you have to overtake a slow-moving truck on the highway, then you will have to plan that maneuver in advance. More so because there is no manual shift available for the gearbox, unlike the Alto. So yes, that's something that maybe Renault engineers should think about and add the manual option on this AMT version as well. It will definitely help people who drive this car on the highway, because it is a good car in terms of stability. So in terms of stability as well as overall comfort at faster speeds, the Kwid really is very good. It's just that the gearbox, the automatic gearbox on this car, is a bit lazy. What you'll also appreciate about the Kwid Climber is the ultralight steering wheel. Now, it doesn't have too much of feel, but that's quite okay, because people buying these kind of cars don't really buy them to take them out on sports tracks or race tracks. They buy them to drive basically from office to home. So in that sense, the steering wheel is very good. It's an ultralight steering wheel, and you can actually simply move it around with your single finger over here, but that's something we don't recommend. But I'm just trying to drive home the point that the steering is ultra light and really easy to use. What you'll also like is the excellent visibility all across. The view from the back window is pretty good. The pillow here isn't very thick, so you get a good view out of it as well. And the rear view mirror also is of a decent size, so there aren't any blind spots or there aren't any dangerous blind spots around this car. And you will enjoy driving this car because you sit up quite high and you get a nicely perched up seat. And the ride comfort also is pretty good overall. The city ride on this car is pretty nice and absorbent, and the suspension does soak in all those bumps quite well at slow city speed. So overall, it's a nice city runabout. What you'll also appreciate is the overall fuel efficiency of this car, and even though Renault does claim very tall figures, we've been consistently getting about 15 or 16 with the automatic version. So that is a very good job in terms of engineering and fuel efficiency from the Kwid. And mind you, we have been driving this car without the AC on, but even then it has delivered 15-16 kpl in the city and chock-a-block city traffic. So kudos to Renault engineers for focusing on fuel efficiency and delivering exemplary figures. Well, so overall, is the Kwid Climber worth the extra price? To be honest, it isn't, because if you are going to invest those 30,000 rupees extra on this car, that money is better invested on about 7 or 8 months of fuel on the regular Kwid hatchback, because this car's extra cost won't really fetch you extra resale values when you're selling it in 5 or 6 years. That said, if you want something which looks striking and a little more personal than the regular Kwid hatchback, then you should definitely go ahead and invest that money. But in my book, the Kwid hatchback is all the hatchback that you will ever really need. It's bye for now, and hope to see you soon.